Hi guys, it's Kevin and Jesse from the Healing Hands duo. Today we're going to talk to you a little bit about diet. Now, we're not going to talk about diet in the sense of, we're going to tell you what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat. We're going to look at it from kind of a little bit of a different perspective. For Jesse and I, this was kind of something that is a little more dear to our heart because 10 years ago when it started for us, when she got sick with ulcerative colitis and then I started getting ill myself, that was the first thing that we really turned to, was a change in diet. So it's been 10 years now, so we've been kind of playing with this topic for a lot of years, and we're just going to kind of look at it from a different perspective, kind of go through our experience with it, what we've learned, and kind of summarize our thoughts on diet, at a higher level.
And I'm just going to chime in. This is actually going to be all about Kevin today, and I'm going to chime in from the perspective of somebody that's suffered with Crohn's colitis. Because the thing is with diet, what a lot of people, there's a misconception that there is one diet that fits all, and that's absolutely incorrect, and one diet does not fit all, and Kevin and I will go through that about actually for the longest time what worked for him didn't work for me, and what works for me didn't necessarily work the best for him. And there are a few different reasons why that could be a possibility for you. We're
gonna go through all that, and like Jesse said, she's gonna kind of be the the co-pilot on this one, I guess. She's gonna be a little more silent for this one. I don't know if it's possible or not.
I'm gonna try. I'll try.
Anyway, but for us, this goes back, I'm gonna say 10 years ago when Jesse first got ulcerative colitis. She's the one that really started looking outside the box on this when she was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. She read the book called the Sed Diet. So that's kind of where things started for us. She learned that, she read that, she came home and kind of went through the cupboards and kind of threw all the food out, and we kind of started fresh. And of course at the time too, I was having problems with psoriasis. I was even having problems with major gluten sensitivities as well. So
which we didn't even know what that was at the time.
No.
When we had actually heard that for the very first time, it was from a nutritionist. Probably over 10 years ago now, and when she told us, oh yeah, you guys should stay away from gluten, we were like, well, what the heck is gluten? So,
yeah, 10 years ago, gluten, that was kind of an unheard thing. You go to the grocery store, there wasn't anything gluten-free. They didn't have the natural food aisles like they do today. So that's fairly recent, within the last 10 years. It's kind of crazy to think back about that now.
Yeah.
I remember
I would literally go grocery shopping. I'd have to go to like 5 or 6 different grocery stores just to pick up like gluten-free things and dairy-free things. And I called every single company, anything that we carried in this house. I actually literally called the manufacturers on it to ensure that they weren't using weird things in their canning systems, and that everything was gluten-free, things were soy-free, because I had a lot more restrictions than just the gluten. I obviously had to stay away from sugar for a very long time, gluten, dairy. Actually, we were both 100% grain-free for at least 2 years. So.
Well, that's kind of where when this very first diet that we tried, that's what it was. You couldn't eat any of these things.
Yeah.
So no dairy, no grains, no sugar, no starch. Really, just a basic
basically
as you can get. It is kind of a healing diet, I guess is what you would call it, for people that can't digest their food properly.
Yeah, and if anybody kind of wants to go into that a little bit, I have done another video. I will link it up above here so that you could see what I did to kind of heal my ulcerative colitis. I say ulcerative colitis because that's what I was first diagnosed with, but it was probably like 3 years in. They actually did another colonoscopy, and they said it was presenting more like Crohn's disease that actually was restricted to only the colon. So they now classify it as Crohn's colitis is what I have. Originally it was pan ulcerative colitis, but now it looks more or less like Crohn's. However, I haven't had an updated colonoscopy in a very long time because I'm choosing not to do that because I've been doing very well lately with my health. So I'm not going to do that until I feel like I need to. So.
Yeah, so this, like I said, this was the first diet that we tried. Jesse bought the book, and she read this, and that was where it all started. And then we realized how, the benefits we were getting from this, just from diet. That's all we did. And I noticed things, changing in my skin, all the issues I was having from digestion, from gluten and all these things that we eliminated. I had pretty profound results, and I know you did too, obviously. So that really opened up our eyes to, we need to pay attention to this,
And with what I was struggling with, it did take time. Like it wasn't we changed our diet and overnight I felt a difference. For me, it took about, I would say, before I started to see some improvements with the SCD diet, or specific carbohydrate diet, from by Elaine Gottschall. I think it took me a good year to start seeing that that I was feeling a difference. Kevin's skin, actually, his psoriasis started clearing up. Probably we noticed, what, 3 months in?
Oh, yeah, within several months,
like
yeah.
3 months in, he noticed a huge difference, and this is something that he'd been struggling with ever since I met you. And
ever since college.
Yeah,
this was an ongoing thing for me, and it just got worse. And then this was the first thing that actually I got some relief, and it wasn't
without taking without having topical steroid creams and all that stuff. Yeah,
I didn't have to use the cream, so this was huge for us to kind of go through this and have these kind of results. So after we got some results there, this is kind of where I went a little crazy, and I wanted to know more. Like, I realized, food has this much impact. I need to know more about this. So I started reading just about every diet book I could get my hands on.
Literally.
I just started buying books like crazy.
Yeah.
So it started with the SCD diet, and later the next diet that we kind of introduced to was the Body Ecology diet and the GAPS diet. Those two, with the SCD diet, they're very closely related to each other. They're all kind of formulated on kind of more gut and digestive health, at least from that perspective.
Healing the gut.
Healing the gut is pretty much what it is. The Body Ecology diet really focuses on fermented foods. That's the big kind of, big thing about the Body Ecology diet. And then the GAPS diet, they kind of look at that a little bit too, but they also look at bone broth. You kind of drink bone broth all day long to kind of heal and seal the gut up. So looking at those two diets with the SCD diet, we were kind of playing around with all three of them there, and I started fermenting my own food. We were doing fermented vegetables. I was doing the coconut kefir water. I was cracking coconuts, and then you can make this kefir water. That is part of the Body Ecology program. So we started to do that, and then we started to even drink bone broth. We started to make our own bone broth by slow boiling a whole chicken for like hours and hours and hours.
Yeah,
and,
it's quite the process. So like, if you can get bone broth already pre-made, and you can find it at a lot of grocery stores now. Back then you didn't.
Yeah.
A lot of people think just boiling, bones for just only a few hours will give you a good sufficient bone broth, but it won't. It's literally like you need to have a slow cook on them. I think it's like for 24 to 48 hours, something ridiculous like that, in order to get the gelatin out of the bone and all that. But
So this, as we went through and kind of incorporated some different things from all these three diets, we were kind of juggling all three and kind of taking certain things from each one. And we did that for a couple of years. I don't know how many years we were doing that. Probably.
Well, maybe 3, 2, 3.
3-4 years we played around with that, and then, we started to be able to, like, I could eat normal food again. I could digest my food, and, I was starting to feel better, and Jesse was too. So this was kind of a huge discovery for us. So we kind of course, it didn't stop there. We kept going. So after we kind of looked at those three diets, I looked at something called the Rosedale Diet. That was kind of the next diet I looked at, and it is an interesting one because it's more a low-carb, kind of high-fat diet. So it's kind of a more sustainable diet. We kind of went through the healing phase. We kind of got there, and then we wanted to go into kind of more of a sustainable diet.
Yeah.
So I looked at this one first, and this was a pretty interesting concept with the Rosedale diet, because what Dr. Rosedale talks about is he talks about leptin resistance is kind of the key fundamental problem for just about every disease you can see on the planet now. It's really linked to a lot of things. So Dr. Rosedale kind of pioneered this kind of protocol here to kind of deal with leptin resistance in order to kind of, heal various diseases and stuff like that, especially like heart disease and diabetes and things like that. Leptin resistance is a big problem. So leptin in itself, what it is basically a hormone. It's a hormone that controls all the energy metabolism in the body. So it's a big one. I mean, not many people have actually heard of that before. And
it's where a lot of diabetes and all that is derived from too, right? And that's why we're seeing such an increase in type 2 diabetes now, because there's so much leptin resistance at this point, and people are developing things like that. So, and obesity is another problem with leptin resistance as well, which I'm sure you'll get into. Yeah,
leptin in itself, it's a hormone, like I said, and it's released by fat cells. So your fat cells release this hormone, which your brain pays attention to. So the brain's kind of monitoring all the leptin within the whole body.
I guess what he's trying to say too is that because a lot of us don't realize it, but we're sugar burners as opposed to fat burners. And that becomes a big problem and that's why people are this is why diabetes happens in the first place, but that's why a lot of people feel fatigued, or they have these spikes in their energy because they're burning off sugar and not fat. Once you become a fat burner, then you can actually have sustained energy throughout the day. You also will, when you're consuming enough fat, you feel fuller longer, which is another great thing because you're not consuming empty calories and sugar. So, because the other thing about these empty calories is you will put on weight, because the more sugar you consume and burn off sugar, you'll want to eat more. So when you eat a lot more fat, you sustain for a longer period of time, which means you'll lose weight. So being on a kind of like a leptin resistance diet or a Rosedale diet, it's very similar to kind of like doing kind of a ketogenic
Very
diet.
similar, similar to kind of the ketogenic diet, which is very popular right now, and it's basically all about, you know, eating more higher fat food, kind of forcing your body to burn fat as fuel instead of sugar, you know, kind of getting yourself back into more leptin sensitivity as opposed to leptin resistance, because leptin resistance, your brain just doesn't understand the messages anymore. It doesn't pick up on all the leptin signals that are being circulated around the body. It just can't pick it up. So it's kind of just, the whole information system just goes haywire.
And this is the problem with, I think, where we're seeing such a problem with younger youth today and struggling with obesity and all that, is because, you know, people think it's a problem that people have is a problem with food and what they're eating, and it's not necessarily about it is about what they're eating, but it is the fact that people are eating empty calories, so their brain never shuts off to say when their stomach is actually full. So this is why you have people that are overindulging in these high sugary foods and gaining weight.
So going back to Dr. Rosedale, his concept on this is really food kind of controls the, you know, the leptin signaling in the body. He says food is more the ultimate key player here, but now that we're learning a little bit more about this, it's not necessarily true. Food plays a role, there's no question, but we're also looking at the light in the environment that you live in is a huge control mechanism for leptin as well. I remember I read this and we started doing some different changes in our diet, kind of looking to eat more high-fat foods. You know, we kind of eating a lot more nuts and seeds and, you know, avocados and olive oil and, you know, kind of fatty meats. We didn't eat a lot of meat, but when we did, we were just eating a lot of fat. Pretty much what it was. You know, lots of vegetables too, you know, protein, fair amounts, but really was just no fear with fat, you know. It's kind of a, you know, coconut oil, of course, another big one, you know, things
and
like
I
that,
never gained any weight.
We
lost weight. I never gained any weight by eating a high fat diet. I actually, if anything, I lost a lot of weight on that. And I felt pretty much sustained for the whole day. I wasn't really hungry when we were doing that. Our problem was when we actually forgot the fat for many years. We weren't really paying attention to the fat. I guess the reason why we switched over from a healing diet is because a lot of people will feel like that's a very restrictive diet and you are going to be hungry all the time on that diet if you forget the fat. So if you're not consuming, you know, olive oils and avocados and things like that, and even full fat meats and stuff like that, you are going to feel very hungry throughout the day. So that's something to kind of put out there, and that's something that we missed in the beginning for a very long time, which is why we felt like we were done with a healing diet and we needed to get back onto a more sustainable diet is what we would call it now. Yeah,
and this is kind of where it started, and we kind of saw some more results there. And this was probably goes back about 5 or 6 years when we first started playing around with this one, and then it didn't stop there. I kind of kept going. I wanted to know more. You know, I wanted to I was on a mission here. Really, I kind of kept buying books like crazy, trying to learn a little bit more about.
Too many books all over my house. Too many books. Just
to name a few. I mean, we're gonna kind of talk a little bit more in depth in these in a minute, but some of the other ones that I looked at were the Warrior Diet. That's another big one. The Bulletproof Diet, the Paleo Diet. Everybody seems to hear about that one today. Of course, the Ketogenic Diet, the Anti-Estrogenic Diet. That was another one. The Raw Foods Diet. I looked at that one because I'm a raw food lover, so that was one that I studied quite a bit too. Food combination diets. Of course, we started looking at that too. The blood type diet, which is another interesting one that we'll talk about soon. You know, eating right for your blood type. I think
very important. Probably why he does well with a high vegetarian diet, whereas I'm doing better with a vegetarian diet. But yes, okay, we're
gonna get into that in a minute. And then of course we looked at intermittent fasting, which is another interesting kind of strategy for when it's more timing of foods. You know, kind of keeping your foods and your feasting to 6 to 8 hours within the day. And then the rest of the day, you're completely fasting. So it's just water, juice, teas, these types of things. So it's just kind of a smaller, time frame where you eat your meals. So this is supposed to kind of introduce a lot of, your genes start to do all kinds of crazy things when they're in a kind of a fasting mode. So it's it's an interesting concept that we looked at too, and
which is when you
something
trigger,
I still do today.
You trigger leptin when you go
absolutely.
into when you fast.
Fasting is
that's how you
hugely
trigger leptin, right? Is when
Yeah.
you go into fasting, because you go into what's technically a starvation mode.
Yeah, intermittent fasting is an interesting protocol. It's got some benefits for sure if you do it right. And when you put the body into a fasting state, there's a lot of healing and a lot of interesting things that happen in the body for sure.
Yeah, certain certain hormones kick on that you don't actually even express until you actually go into this semi-starvation mode or whatever.
Your genes too, they start to go into a lot of different programs start to run to kind of go in to kind of start healing you, and all kinds of things you can look up on that too. It's something that I still do today, and even you.
Which
right?
I think it's important to mention here, though, if you are struggling with a chronic illness or any of those types of things, especially when it comes to GI issues like I was struggling with, I wouldn't recommend intermittent fasting in the beginning, because the thing with us is that you're going to probably do better with smaller meals throughout the day, so probably smaller meals and smaller snacks, until you can get your GI health to a place where you're better absorbing your food. Again, these diets that we're discussing now are more sustainable, advanced diets. So in the beginning, I strongly suggest everybody starts off with a healing diet first, just to kind of work your way into having your digestion work properly again. Because if you jump into some of these more advanced diets, you're going to struggle. I tried to even go into a raw foods vegan diet for a while. Well, I hadn't done all my healing, and it didn't go very well for me, and it actually induced more inflammation in my gut and more fermentation and issues that way. So,
and all these diets too, I'm not expecting you guys to go out and read them all. That's not the point either.
No.
We're kind of just, I've read them all, I'm kind of crazy like that, but in time here we're going to go over kind of the conclusions that we have based on all these diets that we've tried, and what our concept is about diet in general, because it is very confusing for people if you're first kind of looking into this and trying to change your diet for whatever reason. I mean, there's so many diets to choose from. There's just so many, and that's one of the topics we're going to talk about in a minute here, is that most of the confusion for people is that there is so many freaking diets to choose from. It's insane how many. There's like a new diet book every week. I swear, there is.
And honestly, they're just probably they're just branches of other diets that I've heard of for a long time. It's like even paleo now, they've got something called like a, oh my gosh, what is it called? Carnivore, paleo, or something. And it's just, again, these are just high meat based diets, high fat and all that stuff, like things that all existed. Like some of these diets even sound a lot to me like the Atkins diet that we used to have back in the day.
Speaking of that, even just before I kind of prepare, a few days ago as I was preparing for this video, I kind of did a little Google search. I kind of Google searched the top diets of 2018 just to kind of see what was out there, and there was some interesting results I found. I'm just going to read a few of them here. Actually, the number one diet that's actually happening right now, it's called the DASH diet, and it's kind of based on controlling high blood pressure, and it is controlling salt. That is the key concept of this diet, is to control salt with helping your high blood pressure. And someone just called that a DASH diet and wrote a book on it. So that's an interesting concept there. And another one that I found too, it's called the flexitarian diet. So this is kind of a flexible vegan diet is what they call it. So you can have some meat occasionally, but it's kind of more focused on vegan. So I think it's more focused on those that are kind of really looking to try and go vegan, but don't want to 100% make the switch. So this diet allows for just a little bit of meat in there. Someone wrote a book on it and called the flexitarian diet. And apparently a lot of people are doing this now. So that's another one that's a more popular one that came out too. And the next one is called the MIND diet. MIND. M-I-N-D. And this diet is more focused on kind of to prevent dementia and Alzheimer's. So it's kind of more focuses on the concept of the Mediterranean diet, which is a very popular one too. Kind of focuses on the concept of that, and it also focuses on the concept of the DASH diet. So this guy's kind of combined both of them, and they call it the MIND diet. So there's another one you can find. Then there's another one that's called the TLC diet.
When are we going to drop? We're writing our book. We're writing our book on a diet very soon. Coming to Amazon or wherever.
The TLC diet, it's called the therapeutic lifestyle change diet. And it's more to control cholesterol. That's the key concept behind that one. And then there's another one that's called the volumetrics diet. That's another very popular one that's happening right now too, where it's
popular.
You can eat lots of food. This is the concept. People really want to eat a lot of food, but you want to lose weight. How do you do that? That's what this diet's all about. It's called the volumetrics diet. It's crazy. I mean, this is just
Yeah,
tip of the
it's so
iceberg.
confusing. It would
No
be so
wonder, like, this
confusing.
is-
It was
people are-
confusing for us, and
Oh,
there's
man.
honestly, you're right. There is like a dozen of them every
It's
week
insane.
now,
insane.
and it was really confusing for us.
Yeah.
Until we just kind of figured out what worked for us, and the best way to do that is really to listen to
It
your
is.
body and to
That's-
understand how your body reacts within
Definitely.
your surrounding environment, and we'll get into that.
That's where that's going too. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to kind of bring this up because there is so many diets out there, and I understand that people are so confused. And just going back to some of the diets that I tried, I mentioned the warrior diet. So these diets that I looked at, they kind of have a more of a, they make sense from, you know, when you look at nature, for example, how nature works. So these diets are kind of more based on that, which is something that appealed to me, right? Like, for example, the warrior diet. I remember reading that several years ago too. Ori Hofmeckler, I think, is the author on that one. This diet kind of more focuses on under eating during the day. So you wake up and you're fasting for the majority of the day, and then you have a feast for your dinner. So his concept is based on, you know, that's kind of what the ancient warriors used to do back in the day. They'd get up, they'd fast, they'd go hunt their food, and then they'd come back and they'd feast like crazy.
Yeah,
So,
that's kind of what I'm doing.
Yeah,
now.
it's kind of an interesting concept, and that seems to make sense because that's, you know, the diets that kind of appealed to me were, what did they do back in the day? I'm sure they just didn't go around, like, food wasn't plentiful and available.
Yeah,
like
there
it is
weren't
today.
grocery stores, so they didn't go,
Right.
oh, I want this and I want to eat.
Yeah.
Or they didn't, you know, it was the middle of winter and they didn't have fruit and
For
all
sure.
that to be feasting on that. They had what was available to them in their
Yeah.
environment. So,
Yeah,
you know, we were very adamant about learning how to eat that way.
for sure. So that was kind of the one key diet that I read that actually made sense. I got a lot of concepts that I used from that I still use today too. The next one was the Bulletproof Diet. I think most people might have heard about this one because it's a more popular one right now too, where the author's Dave Asprey. He talks about, I mean, he's written a book on this, and it's a pretty interesting diet as well. It kind of more, so it's focused on more supporting fat loss. So kind of getting your body back to a lean state, kind of managing, you know, building muscle, things like that too. How to, you know, trim down, build muscle. These two key concepts, which people are really looking for, right? All while lowering inflammation and balancing kind of blood sugar and things like that. So that's kind of the key concepts of this diet, where it's kind of, you know, you can trim down, build muscle, and at the same time you can really keep inflammation at bay, which we know now inflammation is a big one for, you know, just about every, it's the roots of every pretty much every disease that exists. So controlling that is a big one. So that's why this one's kind of got a lot of good reviews on there right now too, right? So, and of course balancing hormones, he talks about that too a lot. And no counting calories. That's the key concept that he talks about.
Yeah.
No need for that.
Yeah. We've never counted calories.
Yeah.
Ever.
So-
So all these, I don't want to trash any diets that count calories. I'm just saying, you know, I never, not that either of us really struggled with our weight. Well, I shouldn't say that. You did struggle with your weight when you were
At the beginning.
younger.
Yeah,
You
at
were,
the beginning. Sure.
he had weight to
Definitely.
lose. Not even when we started, but I'm saying when you were younger, you did struggle with
Yeah.
your weight. But did you ever
sure.
count calories even back
No.
then? Yeah. To lose
No.
weight? No. Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
Not a big supporter on that. So
Me neither.
anyway, this was kind of a hits. This diet kind of hits all things, and he talks about, you know, a lot of the foods you can't eat. He talks about foods that are kind of in the green, yellow, and red zone. Red is never eat. Yellow on occasion, and green is green light. You can eat them, which are more, like I said, you know, your vegetables and your nuts and seeds, which kind of very tie into a lot of the other diets that we did too, right? So
Right.
that was an interesting one. I remember reading that. I got some good tips on that. And of course, the next one's the Paleo Diet. That seems to be one of the more popular ones right now today too, right? The Paleo Diet is more based on the fact that you could eat anything that you could hunt and gather back in the day. That's really the key concept of the Paleo Diet, which makes sense. You know, you're going back to kind of the very similar concept of the warrior diet, where you just eat things that were available at that time. You know, you didn't have processed foods, you didn't have, you know, canned foods and sugar and processed crap and all this stuff that we're eating.
No, and a lot
So
of people
this-
do very well on the paleo diet.
sure.
A lot of people feel
Definitely.
much better. Inflammation is dropped off on paleo. A lot of people say that they are more satisfied with their
Yeah.
meals, and a lot of people do
Definitely.
lose a lot of weight. It's
Definitely.
not the greatest diet for those that want to be vegan or vegetarian, obviously, but we'll get into that as
Yeah.
well.
Well, that is the next one here too that I read. It's the raw foods diet, and that's something that actually did very well for me. I mean, I love raw food. That's one of my
Yeah.
most favorite foods, and that's basically what this diet is. Everything you eat raw,
Yeah.
no cooking.
Yeah.
So
And it did, I mean, I couldn't eat raw in the beginning because with Crohn's colitis, what a lot of people may not be aware of is that we're not able to digest fiber. So obviously raw foods are high in fiber, so that will sit and ferment in my gut and cause extreme pain. and then put me into what's called a flare. So for the longest time, I couldn't eat a high fiber diet. So when he wanted to eat raw and start going raw vegan, I still had to stick to eating my vegetables for a while, like eating them very overcooked, very mushy, which I know is not necessarily healthy, but was the only thing I could actually absorb and actually manage to digest, as well as eating meat. So there was a time where both of us were wanting to eat a little differently. However, I can eat raw food now. Now that I've done a 100% gut healing, well, at least I believe that I've gone through 100% of gut healing. So your body does change, and you're able to eat different things as your body heals and changes as well.
Sure, yeah. So we kind of looked at that too, and then the blood type diet. I remember looking at this one. This is a big one.
This is a big one for us too.
Forget about this one, and this one has a lot of facts to back this one up too. When you look at some of the testing that's been done on this diet, but basically what the blood type diet is that there are 4 blood types, right? You've got A, B, and then O. So you need to know what your blood type is, obviously. And there are specific foods that are more favorable depending on your blood type.
Right.
And there's a lot of history behind that too. When you look at the history of the bloodlines, and of course, you know,
there's a lot of controversial stuff looking at the bloodlines. You know, there's also, you know, the RH negative, RH positive bloodlines, and of course, Kevin and I are on the opposite spectrum there. And I'm O, and I'm
type A. Yeah.
So
we're opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, complete opposite ends of the spectrum. We couldn't be any more different in when it comes to our blood.
And our dietary requirements on what actually, what works well with us as far as foods are completely different.
Right.
And we'll get into that in a minute. I'm not going to talk too much about that right now, but it is something that is a key one. Of course, the Ketogenic Diet too, that was the next one. I remember looking at that one. That's kind of more similar to the Rosedale Diet. Very, very similar. They focus on high fat, low carb. And their key concept is more forcing the body to burn fat as fuel. And it kind of forces the body into a state of ketosis. So that's kind of similar to what the Rosedale Diet is, which is a more popular one is today. It's a very popular one right now. And then the last one I kind of looked at, and this is the more, I've read a lot of them, but I'm just kind of focusing on the ones that were key that we still kind of follow today. This one's called the EPI Paleo Diet. So this is kind of based on Jack Kruse's kind of protocol. He's kind of taken paleo a little bit to a different level. Let's look at it that way. So it kind of focuses a lot on the paleo type foods, but it also focuses on eating to the light cycles in your environment, which is a big one. So eating to your seasons. You know, for example, like if you're living in the equator, somewhere near, tropical, you're probably going to eat a lot of kind of grow in that kind of lighting environment, right? Whereas if, for example, let's say you live up in the Arctic, And you're probably not going to eat things like strawberries and bananas and things that grow like in the equator. So there's kind of a mismatch.
Near the equator.
A mismatch in the information that you're feeding into your body. And Jack Kruse talks a lot about this, which is a real cause for a lot of the diseases that are happening right now.
Yeah, just because we kind of mentioned that before, like you know, if you're living somewhere cold, you're probably not going to be exposed to tons of vegetables and fruit and all that during that time. Yes, you will if you go to the grocery store, but I'm saying you couldn't naturally find it in your environment. So in that case, you need to, obviously what would sustain energy in colder climates are higher fat foods. So you would get that from, you know, meat base or other fat or other healthy fats. So,
fatty meats.
Your fish is a really big one too, which we do still eat a lot of fish. I know a lot of people have problems with that because of the mercury. But again, if you look for cold watered fish from cooler climates, colder waters, smaller fish will have less mercury as well. So that's another option too.
Exactly. And last but not least, I looked a lot into Vedic Medicine too, which is the kind of the Indian way of diet and living. And it was a pretty interesting kind of concept that they have too. That's kind of balancing more the 5 elements in the body. That's kind of what it's focused on. And I've been kind of playing around with that too. It's a very interesting kind of you know, older protocol. This goes back thousands and thousands of years when you look at you know, kind of balancing the constitution in your body, which I've talked about in other videos too. So those are the kind of the diets that I read. Those are the kind of the diets that we've learned, and to this day we probably take something from every single one of them that we use in our daily life.
Yeah, because people often ask me, oh, well, what diet do you guys follow? And I would hate to even call it a diet at this point. It's mostly, for us, it's a lifestyle change that we've made many years ago. We did start off with a healing diet, but now we do kind of take all of these diets that we've just mentioned and we kind of incorporate little bits and pieces of every single one of them into our life, really, at this point. So, and it's been working out for us, you know, like I said before, maybe someday we'll write a book and we'll call it whatever, our diet. I don't know.
Exactly.
Whatever. Might as well.
There is no diet for what we do. It's a combination of like 10, 12 different diets that we've read over the years, and it's been more a trial and error. Right. You know, it's an experience that we went through and we found what works. It's not like we just stick to one diet and say, oh, this is the way it is and this is the way that everybody should eat. It's not like that at all. And we're going to go this next, where we're going to go next is kind of more our conclusions based on our experience over the last 10 years with all these diets that we've tried. Right. And kind of what our thoughts are as a whole on looking at it from a different perspective, a different change in thought when it comes to diet, on, you know, what people might want to consider.